The founder of Lubavitch. In the early history of Lubavitch, back in the far distant past, there figured a remarkable Jewish personality who has been remembered for generations, even unto our time, Meir by name. He was one of those righteous men who preferred to live by the toil of his own hands, not wishing to remain in their old home, and in general, wishing to form a new basis for their own existence and that of other fellow Jews. He and 5 other families left their native town and went forth to seek some corner where they could settle on the land and earn their living by their own labors. Apparently, Meir already had in mind the creation of a Jewish colony, an idea which was later taken up and carried out with practical results by the Rebbes of Lubavitch. For, according to the tales that are told about him, Meir really got busy building up a colony in the very place where Lubavitch sprang up later. Surrounded as it was by forests and situated on the banks of a river, it was a most desirable spot for a colony, and so Meir, together with the families that followed him, started in earnest on the task of cutting down trees and therewith building houses. What name this small settlement had, if a name was at all thought of at the beginning, is not known, but the name Lubavitch, which this same colony founded by Meir was later given, very well described and characterized its founder. As it is related, Meir distinguished himself by his great love for his fellow Jews and also non-Jews. His love for his fellow beings was boundless. He used to quote the sages that he who finds favor in the eyes of his fellow beings will also find favor in the eyes of God. Obviously, in order to find favor in the eyes of a fellow man, one must be good and kind to all and ready to be self-sacrificing. And not only towards his fellow beings did Meir show his love and respect, but he also loved all God's creatures, be it a 4-legged animal, a fowl, or wild bird. To him, everything that had life was to be adored and held sacred. He used to say that showing love towards one's fellow beings, as well as to God's other creatures, gave great pleasure to the Almighty. It can be readily understood that Meir was a great philanthropist towards Jews and non-Jews alike, and because of this, his name very soon became known in his whole neighborhood, and even far afield. Many stories were told about Meir's kindness. No wonder, then, that the new settlement was named Luba, meaning love, both in the Russian and Polish languages. Later, the suffix Vitch was added, and thus Luba became Lubavitch, the symbol of love for God's creation, and as a matter of course, also love towards the Creator of the world. Meir was the forerunner of a line of tzaddikim and mystics who, in the course of hundreds of years, made Lubavitch their home. For this very reason, Lubavitch later merited to become a Jewish center, from which emanated Jewish authority and leadership, which were recognized and accepted throughout the Jewish world. Lubavitch never became a large city, though tens of thousands of visiting Hasidim streamed into it from all parts of Russia. According to reports, there were 110 Jewish families in Lubavitch, at the time when the Mittler Rebbe, son of the founder of Chabad, settled there in the year 5573, 1813. Earlier on, when the Alter Rebbe studied as a boy in Lubavitch in the years 5516 and 5517, 1756 and 1757, the number of Jewish families there was between 75 and 80. Although Lubavitch was about 1.5 versts long and 1.5 versts wide, that is, an area of about a quarter mile, in the center of the town there was a large marketplace where the shops were to be found. 3 long streets led off from the marketplace, one called Brom Street, leading towards the town of Dober Mizel, the second called Shilova Street, leading towards Rudnia, and a third called Chachliuka Street, leading toward Rzosno. Apart from these 3 main streets, there were small streets, known as Sidice, Cold Street, and Vigon Street, and River Street. In the north of Lubavitch flows the big river, and in the west, near the cemetery, there was a small rivulet. The large river was called Berezin, Birch, whose source is in the village of the same name, the latter deriving its name from the fact of the birch trees surrounding it. The small river was called the Gravestone River, because it streamed forth from one of the old gravestones in the old cemetery. The letters on the gravestone were no longer legible, and so it is not known whose grave it was. The injunction not to use the water of the Gravestone River, either for drinking or washing oneself, had been passed down from generation to generation. Although Lubavitch was in Polish territory, its non-Jewish population was always Russian. The Jews and non-Jews in Lubavitch always lived peacefully together.